And good evening, everyone. Well, thank you very much for turning up, everybody. I see from the stream count that it's already gone above 100 people tonight. So I did wonder whether this might be a topic that might get a little bit of interest. But there we go. So I have my hat. I'm all set. So lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for coming along. Appreciate that. I appreciate this is also directly after the Frontier stream. I did pop in and see a little bit, say hello to Bruce. So I hope you all gave him a warm welcome. I saw Stephen trying to land, which I thought was quite amusing. Even I can do a better job than that, right? When I remember to put the undercarriage down. So there we go. But lovely. I'm just looking at the chat. It's just gone completely bananas. So apologies if there's folks on the stream who I haven't spoken to before. I'm never going to keep up with that at the moment. Welcome welcome all to my stream. For those of you who know me, hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Drew Wagar. You may have heard of me or you may not, but and I wrote a while back now some of the official Elite Dangerous books. The last one was done 3 years ago, and both of them featured a character, which is going to obviously be the discussion tonight, right? Okay. quite a controversial figure for many reasons in the elite lore. So anyway, so I wrote these books. I've worked for Frontier in the past to put bits and pieces into the game, and we ran an event 3 years ago in which things happened, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay. Now, Salome is the character. Actually, Salome isn't technically her real name. But she'll be known to the community as Salome primarily because that was her in-game commander name. Yes, and some people do refer to her as Salome as well, which is a play on words, which we'll get to. We'll get to. Patience. Okay. Now, before we get to that, just a couple of reminders of the rules. Okay. Now, I'm a little bit surprised. I thought people would want to come along and listen to this, but I am a little bit surprised by the number of people here, which is great. So thank you very much for popping along. This is potentially a slightly controversial topic. Okay. Now it is 3 years on, right? So we should have all calmed down a little bit. But everyone knows that at the time there was quite a bit of what we in the gaming community call salt, right? About both what happened, the way it happened, the way things were organised, the outcome. Okay, so this is I suppose quite a big deal for the Elite Dangerous community. Now there will be people on this stream who were involved. I was involved. There were people on here who took part, and I have seen on the chat that there are people here who made shall we say made the killing blow and made the ultimate outcome of various bits and things. Now, what I do expect and what I do require of you all, okay, is to just, behave yourselves nicely. I'm sure you understand what I mean. We are 3 years down the road, and I appreciate this was a controversial event, but it's happened. It has been settled. It is part of the law, and the story from that perspective is complete, right? I will in a future stream talk about Salome's law story. Okay, that's actually part of the actual law tour that I'm doing from the 2nd of April. So we'll talk about Salome's and Kahina's story in the law a bit. I want to concentrate tonight about the meta. Okay, now meta is an excellent word actually. It is the above and beyond is the Latin for meta. This is a bit more about what happened, how did we get there, what happened around that event, as best I can tell it, and I will try and be impartial. Now, clearly, I'm not impartial, right? So I'll say that up front. I'm not impartial. I was flying Commander Salome's ship that night, okay, and I'm hoping that some folks from my escort wing. Might be also in the chat tonight, and they can pick me up on any details I forget. I had a wing of 3 other commanders from the children's group, Children of Raxxla, and they were Zenith, Eisen, and Isaiah. And oh, I see Isaiah's on the stream tonight. Excellent. So that's fantastic. Now we all know how the event ended, right? We all know how the event ended. And we will come to that. We will come to that. But you know, we will have a bit of. We will touch on who Salome was, why it mattered, what I was attempting to do. Okay, what kind of expanded out from that intention, and then what we saw as a result of everything that happened, and the entire story. To be honest, I mean, I've been today looking through as many internet references as I can. I've seen new stuff that I have never seen before. So this story has been told many times, and it's unlikely we're going to ever get an entire view of it. But I have never spoken on a stream of this before. I've put up the occasional blog article, but I haven't spoken about this on stream. And I wanted to kind of do this because, you know, it was a thing that happened, right? And it's interesting from a perspective of Elite Dangerous history. This is now 3 years ago. The game came out in 2014, so we're talking 50% of the lifetime of Elite gone, right? After this event. So all this stuff happened in the first half of the Elite Dangerous kind of story, right? Which is quite a while ago, but you know, it's a rare week I don't get an email or a tweet or something about Salome. And for those of you who have been playing Elite who haven't, you know, don't know what this is about or came to Elite, you know, particularly the PS4 players I'm thinking of here, this will happen before you even had a version of Elite to play, right? You know, this stuff happened in 2017 and earlier, and mid 2017 was when it all kind of finished, right? So I've got Raxxla under my hat. Yeah. I'm gonna have to do another stream on Raxxla. Anyway, let's get on with it. Okay, so please just bear in mind. Okay, I will police the chat a little bit in case anything gets a bit raucous, because I know, you know, emotions ran high then, and even 3 years on, they may still be they may still run high occasionally. So just be aware that there are people in the chat from both sides of this story. I just expect the higher standards of behaviour. I've never had a problem on my streams before, and I don't intend to start now. So there we go. All right. So first things first, who was Salome, right? Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I wrote this. Apologies for the slight glare there. I wrote an official book. It wasn't the only one. An official book when Elite Dangerous first came into existence, right? It was kickstarted. Frontier Developments put up a Kickstarter. We funded it to, I think, £1.5 million or something like that, between basically right at the beginning of 2014. Or was it 2013? I can't remember. Anyway, it's a long time ago now. And one of the prizes on that was, one of the pledge awards for £4,500 was write your own book. So I was a kind of not very well-known author at all. I'd written a bit of fanfic in the Elite Dangerous universe, and I pitched for a Kickstarter of my own to raise the cash to put onto their Kickstarter. That's a long story, right? But eventually, I got the license to write a book, and I wrote a book. Now, Elite Reclamation, this book, was written before the game came out. So if anybody's read this book, and I imagine some of you on the stream have, you'll notice that certain things in it's not quite right with Elite Dangerous, because I only ever saw the alpha version of the game when this book was produced, and it was sent to the publisher as the alpha came out, and we only had minor opportunities to make tweaks based on what we saw in the alpha version of the game. So the book came out way before the game was properly released. Okay. So that was first. It came out along with a whole bunch of other books at the same time. Now it featured a lady. There she is, Lady Kahina Loren. Now she was the kind of anti-hero character in the book. She wasn't, wasn't your classic goody-goody heroine. She wasn't the save the princess type. She was actually quite a nasty piece of work, and she was deliberately so. Okay, she was deliberately so. And what I thought I'd do is just to give you some context. I'm going to show you some things that nobody has ever seen before. Okay, I'm going to show you a little bit of the backstory of how that book was put together very quickly. So let me go to full screen here. So this is a piece of artwork that I used at the time. Now Salome was based on, or Kahina, as she's known at this point. Okay, Kahina was based on a another series. I don't know if any of you have seen Downton Abbey. Those of you in the UK will know Downton Abbey, between 2005 and 2010. Now, Kahina's mannerisms were based upon Lady Mary Crawley. So if you look her up, or if you know Downton Abbey, that's what I had in mind as I was creating the Kahina story. So what I have here, this is the document that I sent to Frontier in 2013, 2014 to pitch the story to FDev. And this goes through all sorts of stuff about the background and what's going on and and it shows you the design. Here you'll notice things like the design of the prism system. So between myself and Michael Brooks, I worked out the design of the prism system. If you go to the prism system in game now, you will see it like this. Slightly better graphics, obviously. It was all worked out. Okay, and there's reasons for that. Now down here, I've got my character bios. One of the things you do when you put your book is who are the characters, what do they do. Okay, so this is the earliest reference to this character that we're going to be talking about tonight. For my copy of Word, there we go. So Lady Kahina Tijani. I'm not quite sure how I ended up on the pronouncing. Lady Kahina, Eddie, certainly. Kahina is a Berber Arabic name which has some significance. Tijani is her middle name, and Loren is her family name. She's an imperial. So she's dark-eyed, grey eyes, dark-haired, grey eyes, average kind of build, look. You know, she's pretty, but not that you'd notice. She's physically fit. She can use a sword, but she is snappy, she's aggressive, she's sharp-tongued, she's arrogant, she's not particularly nice, right? Okay, and in the book, a picture is painted of her as a rather kind of stuck-up, posh imperial woman who manipulates her way out of a wedding, stitches up her older sister, and then there's a coup on the prison world. And part of that is virtually her entire family is murdered, and she's forced off planet, and in fact she's thought to be dead. So that's where she starts off. Okay, so she's a imperial high-ranking lady, daughter of a senator. She is not very pleasant company. Okay, she's arrogant, she's snobby, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's where she starts. All right. Now in the book, she picks up the name Salome because she basically loses her memory. She doesn't know who she is. She has an accident and she loses her memory. The guy who rescues her accidentally happens to have a cat, I think, that he called Salome. And because the first thing that Kahina does when she wakes up is sort of smash him across the face and draw blood, it reminds him of this cat, right? So he calls her after his cat. So she picks up this name Salome. That's where it comes from. So she's known as Salome. Her alter ego, if you like, is Salome. They have a bunch of adventures, right? There's a prism system. If you go to the prism system in game, you can look up the tourist beacons. That will tell you a little bit about the story as well. It's all kind of synced with what's going on in game. So that's where she comes from. Now that happened in 2014. In 2015. The game was going through one of its, a bit like it is now, really, one of its kind of slightly softer moments, you like, less content going on. Now, I was planning to write another book, but Frontier delayed that and delayed that and delayed that to the point where I thought, I don't think this is going to happen. So I'm going to kind of write a final Galnet article and say Salome kind of went missing, right? And if for those of you who were around at the time, on Galnet there is an article basically saying Salome has gone missing. Okay, she's disappeared, and we don't know what happened. And she was on Akinar at the time, and she disappeared. And she disappeared for several months. And that was actually me going, I don't think FDev's going to let me write another book, so I better finish off Salome's story slightly ambiguously and leave it there, right? And I thought, well, that sort of tidies it up. It sort of doesn't, because obviously there was the Formidine Rift mystery, which is another stream that will be coming along at some point in the future, which is alluded to in this book. So those of you who have heard about the Formidine Rift mystery, it starts in this book. And there were clues in game and all sorts of other bits and pieces. But that sort of came to a natural conclusion. That went on for a while. Things at Frontier then changed a bit, okay? And suddenly there was basically an email, right, we'd like to talk to you about another book. But it's going to be different this time. I want you to do something different to what you did before. Okay, well, I'm interested in that. So I toddled up to Frontier, and they said, we want you to write a book, but we want you to write it about in-game stuff. I went, okay, that's going to be quite hard, because the players will do what the players will do, right? It could be all over the shop. So I came up with some ideas. I came up with sort of a skeleton outline of various things, but I did insist on one thing. I said, if we're going to write another book, it has to be a sequel, okay? Because this has got to go. This has got to go somewhere, right? Because we started some things off, and I said, we ought to finish them, because that's good storytelling, right? Don't leave everything kind of unturned. Now, at the time that was going on, there was an expedition in Elite called Distant Worlds, and Distant Worlds was one of the first really big expeditions. You may have heard of Distant Worlds 2, which is obviously slightly more recent. The Distant Worlds, the original Distant Worlds, was a sort of journey across the galaxy. I'm just trying to remember. Was this pre-engineers or not? I can't remember now, but it was relatively early on in the game. A trip across the galaxy to the other side. Somebody will tell me what the there's no Beagle Point. I think it was Beagle Point. And basically get there and then obviously come back. It was pre-engineers. Okay, so it was tough, right? Okay, we didn't have ships with decent jump ranges and all sorts of stuff there. And so basically I think all of us that went didn't have engineered ships. I think engineering was just coming out at that sort of time. So that's about when this was going on. And I had a conversation with Michael Brooks at Frontier and said it would be good to be able to drop in on some of these events and add some kind of mystique around this and indicating there's something coming, right? So I spoke to Michael Brooks. He said, yeah. And then I got in contact with one of the player groups who had adopted Salome, who had actually asked, the Children of Raxxla had asked to adopt Salome after the events of where she'd gone missing from Gowan. And I said, I don't think she's, in myself, I thought, I don't think she's coming back as a thing in Elite Dangerous. So I said, yeah, guys, that's a great idea. If you want to adopt the character as a leader of your organisation, that's fine. So they did. The Children of Raxxla adopted Salome as the leader of their organisation. So then Frontier said, right, we want you to write this story. So I thought, hang on a minute, I do want to have Salome in it. The Children of Raxxla have adopted her as a sort of figurehead. She's made a few proclamations in game because we had a Commander Salome account, right? So she was in game doing things. And then, so what we decided to do is we sent her on the Distant Worlds expedition, and she rendezvoused with the Children of Raxxla out at Beagle Point. And we sort of gate crashed Ed Lewis's stream with Michael Brooks' permission. Now, Ed Lewis at the time didn't. Ed Lewis at the time didn't know what was going on. I can't remember. I think it was. I'm just trying to remember who he was streaming with. It will come back to me. I did make a note of it. Anyway, there was a live stream, an official Frontier live stream going on at the time, and Ed Lewis was in there. Might have been Commander Kai of the. I can't remember. Anyway, there was a live stream, and Salome and the Children of Raxxla were camped about 40 kilometres away, right, in the same instance, in the same private group. And then we flew in and we gate crashed the thing. And basically, I had a script written out for Salome saying there's trouble brewing in in the bubble. You better get back there, and you better watch out, basically, because we knew that some other stuff was coming. So Salome at that point became a lore character, and Ed Lewis is, you can actually, I should dig out the stream, but there's a stream somewhere where Ed Lewis is kind of like, what's going on? What is this? And he said cryptically on the stream, all I know, guys, because Ed didn't have any previous knowledge of this. He said, all I know is that Michael Brooks said something significant in the lore is going to happen tonight. Okay, so that's all Ed knew. And of course the Children of Raxxla were in on it. And we flew across. We left a message for Ed on the live stream, and then as Distant Worlds we turned around and started heading home again. Because it's a long way across the galaxy, right? But Salome had at that point become a lore character who was the titular head of the Children of Raxxla. And then, as Frontier basically said to me, we want you to write the Reclamation book. I worked out a story that would have an arc going through the middle of it, which was Salome's arc. And then there would be deviations left and right based on what the players did. So as part of that, I threw some events in. So you'll probably remember, those of you who were around at the time, there were competing CGs, which I actually thought was quite a neat idea. You'd have two CGs running simultaneously, vying for the same thing, and based on the outcome of the CG, I would basically set the story to going one way or the other, depending on what the outcome was. So the idea was I was trying to write a story, and it eventually ended up being this thing here. This is the second book, Premonition. I was trying to write a story that you guys were steering as much as possible. I had to have some things running through the middle of it that I knew would happen, right? Because it's impossible to write a story otherwise. But wherever I could, I was trying to put in Galnet articles that would give you a clue as to kind of where to go and what to do and how to influence things, and have competing CGs that basically allowed, a bit like those old game books, turn left, turn right, turn to page 25, turn to page 54 kind of things. Those sort of things, right? So that you guys had an opportunity to influence the way that the story was happening. And that happened a lot of times. A lot of you, and I hope quite a few of you on stream, will recognise, there are a lot of, I can't remember what the number of players. Actually, I've got a list, because I was taking notes all the way through. Let me just show you the list, because this is all kind of brand new, top secret stuff, right? So nobody's seen this before. And I'm not breaking, before anyone gets worried, I'm not breaking any NDAs, because this is my bit, okay? This is my research. And there's nothing in here that hasn't happened now, because it's obviously in the published book, so don't worry about that sort of stuff. So if we look in Premonition, which is Elite Dangerous, there we go. We can see down here, where is it? Player events, right? There we go. So this is me making notes of things that you guys did, okay? So there was a war in Mukoji right at the early on. The first contact with the Thargoids happened to a guy on the Xbox, all right? The COR had various people working for them, had allies during the CG that we created. The Commander Drifted Island had an exclusion zone encounter. I can't remember what all these were now, but there's lots of stuff in here. The BGS got changed multiple times. The alien relics, the Guardians and things were discovered like that. Salome got interdicted, and there's various other bits and pieces. Okay, so certain things were happening that I was making notes about in order to make sure that this was as close as I could make it to the events that were actually happening in the Elite Dangerous game. So that was basically the agenda of that, and I was doing that. Okay, now Salome was also a actual commander in the game. So me and a number of other people, we shared some of these responsibilities, right? We had a Commander Salome account. Okay, now when there was something significant in the lore about to happen, Commander Salome, as kind of an NPC, but actually being played by real people, if that makes sense, would pop up in open in a certain location, usually give a speech, because that was the kind of way she was, right? And I would have written that speech in advance, and it would be typed into the chat windows for anybody who happened to be in the vicinity, who'd followed the clues to be in the right place at the right time. Okay, so it was like a tabletop RPG. Okay, and she wasn't the only, and she still isn't actually. For those of you who are in the know, she isn't the only. She wasn't, because she's dead now, right? Spoilers, sorry. It was being put there. Now, those events were telegraphed in advance to make sure that somebody noticed them, right? But typically it wasn't much of a problem, because the moment she came online, people would notice that, and then they would sort of pile into the system to go, oh, hang on, Salome's popped up again, what's she doing? Okay, so and there were key locations that she often visited as well, so she was kind of doing stuff in the lore as part of that, and that was my way of role playing the story during that 2016 to 2017 year. Now, I did have a rule at the time, controversially, that I would always accept a friend request from anybody, because the idea of this was it to be absolutely 100% inclusive wherever possible. Okay, so Salome's account would always accept a friend request. That detail becomes important later on. So, you know, the idea was that this story that we were writing, if people didn't, it's kind of the same with Galnet, right? If you didn't want to take part in it, you didn't have to. Okay, if you were interested in what's this strange woman doing flying around the galaxy, causing chaos, right? Then you didn't have to know. You know, if you wanted to talk about it, you could get involved with it. If you didn't, you didn't. So on and so forth. And deliberately, she did things that were controversial. Okay. One of the things that she happened to get arrested at one point. And the Children of Raxxla took it upon themselves to attack Senator Patrius's flagship, right, in the Etionis system, something like that. You know, and basically drove his flagship out of the system, which I faithfully put in the book, right, because I thought A, it was cool, and B, it was controversial, right? Okay, so now the interesting thing about that is a lot of people looked at that and went, that means the COR, or the Children of Raxxla, the COR as I call them, they're terrorists, right? They've taken a preemptive strike against a peaceful ship for reasons of gameplay. So that, you know, that actually got the Children of Raxxla into quite a lot of trouble, because people then can neither confirm or deny being part of that attack. It definitely happened, right? It definitely happened, and it's in the book because it happened, right? It's a piece of the law. Some people then started going, hang on, the Children of Raxxla are terrorists, right? They keep they attacked Senator Patrius's ship, and Senator Patrius might have been involved with Salome's arrest, but there was no proof, right? So they've taken a preemptive strike. That's outrageous. We're going to declare war on them. Okay, so we started having all this argy-bargy in the game based on who you thought was in the right. And Salome had been deliberately written to be controversial. Okay, I'd made her a somewhat unlikable character. She was in favour of slavery in the Empire because, you know, she's an Imperial, right? She stuck two fingers up at the Federation in quite a number of ways, quite deliberately, right, to try and get player factions to kind of be for or against her. The idea being that you had an opinion on Salome, right? Whether you ignored her or whether you watched her antics, or whether you wanted to be on her side or whether you actually wanted to get rid of her. The idea being that you had an opinion. That was kind of what I was aiming for. That this character was divisive. Whenever she showed up, it meant trouble, right? It meant something was going to go down, and you know, you had to be involved with it, and there were clues and questions and various other bits and pieces to follow. So I was, to be honest, the poor Children of Raxxla people, I mean, ostensibly Salome was their leader, right, but they didn't always know what she was going to do next, which made life a bit tricky for them when she kind of went off on one. She, I was trying to stoke confrontations and various other bits and pieces, in order to make an exciting story, right? So you had this woman who was going off on these mad expeditions across the galaxy, asking other people to do the same on the basis of not very much in the game, because there wasn't very much in the game, right? But was doing the best I can with sort of things. Now, Frontier did put some things in the game, okay? For us to find, and I knew about them in advance, obviously, because I'd kind of asked for them, know roughly what they were. But those sort of things were there, and those sort of things were put in the game for things to discover, and that would then drive you backwards and forwards between various different locations, and you'd be you're getting those kind of stuff. So that's kind of what it looked like, right? And various factions were pitted against other factions. Other factions who were loosely allied with one or other side were basically then asking themselves, hang on a minute, those guys have just taken a preemptive strike. We don't necessarily agree with that. We've pitched ourselves against these other guys who are now at war with, and that was the idea, right? A bit of space politics, a bit of, argy-bargy in the game, right? Okay, a bit of argy-bargy in the game. And that was the purpose of the storytelling, was to try and make the galaxy feel alive, right? Like there was something important happening, and you had a vested interest in the character of Salome, whether you liked her, whether you were trying to kill her, whether you were trying to assassinate her, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So the Children of Raxxla, adopted a trait for their faction, that they almost idolised Salome, right? Okay, so she became almost it's like almost beyond a figurehead. She became sort of a, you just the name of Salome, then we kill you, kind of thing. It became a bit messianic almost at times, which is cool, right? Okay, and other people say, no, she is out and out a terrorist. Okay, we do not trust this woman. If there's an opportunity, we get rid of her, right? We're going to try and kill her. And I would play these off in Galnet, and I also took the power play characters, and I deliberately got them, I wrote in some of their dialogue to basically say things like, Aisling Devale hates her because she's stealing her limelight, right? Patreus sort of maybe admires her a bit because she's doing something. But, there's tension in power play as well. So, all those sort of things were there, right? Okay? All those sort of things were there. And the idea being to make the story kind of interesting. And that's kind of where we got to. And as this started coming to a close, right? Here's where I made my big decision, which resulted in this event. Okay. So I thought to myself, the players have been deciding how this book goes all the way through. Okay, the players have been deciding how this goes down. Okay, so the first Thargoid encounter on Xbox is in here. The first Guardian ruins discovered are in here. Everybody coming back from distant worlds is in here, right? Okay, so these are all things that the players did, and they're immortalized in the lore. All right, and it's the story of Elite Dangerous. It's an official book. It's published by Frontier themselves. Okay, this isn't published by, unlike this one, which was published by a different publisher, which I obviously wrote. This one is published by Frontier. Look, there's a Frontier logo. There it is. There's a Frontier logo on the back. They were the publisher. There was nobody else involved, just me and Frontier. Okay, so that's where that book came from. And what I wanted, because the players have been involved all the way through, I thought there's an ending. There has to be an ending. There has to be a massive something at stake to finish off a story, right? Because stories start and stop. The universe goes on, right? Just like in the real world. But stories start and stop. We have to have a start. We have to have a series of crises. We resolve them. We learn some stuff. There's mysteries, blah, 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 blah. But there's always in a book or a film, right? There's a kind of, there's a crunch, right? There's a point where it stops, and oh my god, it's the end of the book, right? And that's what I wanted. That is what I wanted. That was my motivation, right, for the event. Now, I thought to myself, and and some have accused me of not being a huge player of it. Now, I am not a hardened. I have done everything to death player, but I've done engineering. I've done the Thargoids. I've done Guardians. I've flown the game since the beginning. I've been around in it. I'm not the best PvPer. I will certainly admit that, right? But I'm not an inexperienced player. I won't say I'm anywhere close to the best player, but I know I know the mechanics of the game, right? And I was thinking at this, right? I've watched all the other events. Okay, so the things that I was very excited about. The battle for, and I still don't know how to pronounce this. Can anybody tell me the battle for Lugh? Lugh, right? probably the first ever player-led story that in the game that was actually significant. And there have been others, but that's the one that really sticks out to me. The Battle for Lu. There's even, if you go to the Lu system, then there's actually a memorial, not a memorial, but there's a beacon there that you can go and find out what happened, right? So that's probably the first ever big thing. And I thought, I want something like that, okay? Now I've got Salome, right? She's got, after all this time, she's amassed a bunch of information. That information is sensitive, okay? She wants to reveal some secret, okay? She, at this point, is wanted by the Empire and the Federation, so she's effectively a fugitive from the law, okay? And so what am I going to do? And okay, I looked at the mechanics. Now, many people have accused me of, you don't know how Elite works. And I said, yes, I do, okay? Yes, I do. I know about the instancing, okay? I know it's problematic, but you've got to work with what you've got, right? And so I looked at this and thought, well, what can we do? Can we do a big, battle royale? No, okay? That just won't work. We can't get enough players in instance to have an armada fight. I mean, wouldn't it be cool if we could, right? But we can't. We can't do an armada fight. What else can we do? Could we do it by CG? The problem was at that point there'd been lots of CGs, right? And we were a bit kind of CG'd out. And I thought deciding the end of a book by a CG doesn't give me anything to write a good ending with, okay? Yes, 6,000 tons of bio waste were delivered to the Prism system, or 70 billion combat vouchers were, I can't work with that, okay? I need something more compelling to write a story with. Need something to happen over a period of time, right? That's got crises and stuff. And it's a space game, right? So I want some pew-pew in there. There's got to be ships getting blown up and stuff, right? And all the mechanics of it and interdiction and blah, blah, blah. We've got to have that stuff as the end game for the book, right? So then I was sort of thinking, okay, well, we've got somebody with a secret. They're a fugitive. They've got to get somewhere to deliver the secret, maybe. How about a chase across space? And that was basically how it kind of came across, right? The initial seeds of the ideas. So I had a look online, and I watched what Frontier tried. Okay, so they've tried open mode while streaming and other bits and things, and within 3 or 4 minutes, everyone was dead. And so I thought, okay, so that's not going to work either. And then I looked at the way they were doing it, and I'm thinking, well, okay, there are ways to avoid being killed in open mode, right? It's all situational awareness, and I'll freely go on record. The first time I went into open, and I landed, I think I went to see a Thargoid barnacle or something, right? I landed there. In open mode, I came out of my SRV, drove over to the Thargoid barnacle thing, turned around, and somebody shot my ship to pieces. And all I got in the chat was "lol," and that was it. I was dead. Okay, and I went onto the Frontier forums and said, "This is outrageous! This is outrageous! How dare they kill me? Don't they know who I am?" And all that sort of stuff, right? And everyone basically said, "What did you expect? You went into open mode, you arse, and you got shot to bits because you went out of your ship and left it undefended." Okay, so I went away from that going, okay, all right, hang on a minute. I'm going to have to reset what I think, okay, about open mode. If you go into open mode, anything goes, right? What happens. And if you get interdicted, you get interdicted. And if you get interdicted and the other guy has a faster ship and bigger guns, you're going to die, right? Okay, so that's open mode. It's anarchic. And I was bemoaning originally the lack of well, why are you killing me? Why have you attacked me? There's no motivation for you to attack me in open mode. And the guy was just lol. It didn't need to be a motivation, right? And I had to reset in my head. Okay, so there's people in the game who literally just want to kill for the sake of killing. They don't need a reason. I'm there. I'm going to fire my guns and kill you. Okay, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's open mode, right? So So that's a thing. And then I thought to myself, well, okay, so if we do an event, we could do it. We can't clearly do it in solo because it would just be me. If we do it in private group, then we've got all the problems of managing a private group. Okay, and for the number of players I was hoping to get into it, that looked like quite hard work. And you know, how are we going to know, right? We could just go in open mode and assume it will be anarchic. And the open mode had two advantages. One, we didn't have to police anything. And two, there was no barrier to entry for anybody coming in, right? Okay? And I wanted this to be as open, as inclusive as I could. Okay, that was my intention from the outset. So I pitched this at the COR because the COR are invested in Salome, and they all, I think, kind of looked at me. You know, this was on a Discord chat, I think, or a Skype call or something, and the kind of collective response was, "Are you crazy? Nobody has ever survived in open mode for more than a few minutes. You know, with a target painted on the back, it just doesn't happen." So I said, "Go away and think about it. Go away and think about it, right?" Yeah, could we do it? Is there a way? So anyway, these guys, and all credit to the COR at this point, they went away and thought about it, and they had their friends in Loren's Legion who are a bit more militaristically inclined, because the COR are mostly explorers, right? They took advice on various things, and they came back to me with a serious thing. There are ways to avoid being killed in open mode, okay? You know, legal ways, you know, not logging. Not logging, sea logging, combat logging, etc. Not that, but you know how to avoid. You know, the interdiction minigame is one. Emergency drops are another one, right? The way you refuel, and various other bits and pieces. Okay, so there were lots of techniques that could potentially be tried, and then there's a jump range of your ship and engineering and all those various other bits and pieces. Okay, so there were quite a few tactics that were being discussed. So there was a lot of that. Now, Loren's region and possibly some others, and I do apologise if I miss things out because it's not intentional. It's just it's 3 years ago, right? You know, so the COR were drilled. The COR were drilled for many weeks in advance on how to escort, how to interdict, how to attack, how to disable modules, how to do all sorts of stuff, right? All sorts of tactics and scenarios. It was rehearsed, okay? The idea, can we actually do it? And you know, there were drills run, so we did some test flights with some people playing the bad guys and some people trying to run away to see whether or not we could actually survive. And everyone was trying as hard as they could to push the envelope to see if they could win the scenario, right? That was the point. So the tactics were rehearsed. And this was within the COR, Loren's Legion and me group. Now, to my own chagrin, I couldn't attend as many of these as I wanted to. I could only attend a handful of them. So I was not as experienced as I would like to have been. But that was because I had a day job, I had a family, and I was writing the damn book all at the same time, right? So I didn't have a great deal of time, and Frontier had a deadline, okay? There was a deadline by which it all had to be done. So I was under a lot of pressure here to get the book finished. And that's a thing in itself, right? But that was the idea behind this event, is that Salome, with me as the pilot, would have a wing of protectors in the COR, and we would attempt to make a run from point A to point B, and that was the initial basis of the story. Now, the other thing that we had to take into account was we wanted a bit more interaction than this. Now, there are other characters in this story, and we selected some of them to be handled by players as well. So there's an alliance lady called Sue, spelled with a T, TSU. There was another guy, Yuri, and another guy, Ron. And these were split across PC and Xbox consoles at the time, because we couldn't have, there were lots of problems, right? We couldn't have multiple Salomes. We couldn't have a Salome on Xbox and a Salome on PC, because what if she died on the PC, and what if she didn't die on the Xbox? You know, what do I do with that? Yeah, what's the truth, right? There can only be one Salome. So I said, look, I don't have an Xbox. I'll be Salome, and we will I will fly on the PC. So my wing was on the PC, but we wanted the Xbox crew to be involved as much as we could, right? And so Ran was on the Xbox. Sue was also on the PC, and I think Yuri may have been on the Xbox as well. I can't remember now. But we were trying to be inclusive. PS4 hadn't even come out at that point, so that was not part of the equation, right? So we couldn't do that. So that was the initial setup. Once we thought we had a workable scenario, Yuri was on Xbox. I can't remember which way around it was. Thank you for that, JT442. So that was the scenario, right? So I thought, okay, well, I need to come up with a justification as to why she starts there and where she's got to go to. I needed to talk to Frontier about saying, okay, the end conditions have to be this and have to be that. You know, if she's successful, this happens. If she isn't successful, that happens. Frontier came back with, "Are you mental?" Which was Ed Lewis basically. He said you'll be dead. It will be the shortest event in the history of Elite. It will be over in 4 minutes. He says nobody has survived in open mode for longer than a few minutes. He says particularly if you've got your friends list open. And I said, we've thought about it. We've thought about it. We think we've got a way to survive in open mode. And he said, you can't cheat. You're not allowed to cheat. And I said, no. We're not going to cheat. Because I think he was worried that we were just going to combat log and then move on to the next system, right? Which would have been a bit mean. I said, no, we've come up with this technique, we come up with that technique. And here's the list of techniques that we're going to try. We've trialed it, Ed. We've actually done the scenarios, right? And we think it will work. Okay, we think we can get from here to here. You know, and this was the other problem, right? I wanted a scenario where there was some genuine risk that we wouldn't make it. Okay, this is where the open mode and the friends listing comes in. So what we discovered in the testing of this was that if the friends list wasn't connected, the instancing gave you no choice. Okay, you would never ever see the target. You just would never ever see the target. Okay, and if you didn't know where she was, if you lost her, you know, you could have a wake scanner, right? You can have a wake scanner to identify where the ship had just jumped to. But if you weren't on it straight away, then the wake scanner instance from the hyperspace jump would be gone in the next system. So if you weren't doing your jumps perfectly in sync with Salome in this case, you would lose the trail. So we tried this a few times, and instantly everyone went, "We don't know where she's gone. We've lost her. She's invisible, effectively. I can't see her." So the wake scanner is the correct tool to use in the Elite lore, okay, to determine where a ship has gone, but it's useless at speed. Okay, you can't keep up. You can't keep up with the ship you're trying to pursue. So that didn't work. Okay, so I said, we're going to have to leave the friends list open. I want the friends list to be open. And again, the Children of Raxxla and the Wren's Legion went, "You are mental. You can't do that, Drew. You mustn't do that, right? You mustn't do that because they'll track us everywhere." And I said, yes, but I want them to track us, okay? They've got to have a chance. The bad guys have got to have a chance to kill us, because otherwise it's a meaningless game, right? Salome gets there and everyone else just flies around in supercruise, okay? So there's got to be a chance for it to go wrong, okay? There's got to be a chance for it to go wrong. And the trick was, how do we balance up the probabilities so that it's as close to 50-50 as we can make it, all right? Because if we make it so that Salome can just fly through and nobody can really see her coming or where she went, that doesn't make for much fun, right? There's no chance for the bad guys to have a chance at killing her. If we make it so that it's obvious where she is all the time, and we go slow to give people a chance, we might overplay it and then we'll just get ambushed and then we're dead, right? So this is the problem that we were facing. We were trying to balance this up. So I made a call. It was my event, right? For good or for ill, that the friends list would be open. Salome would accept everybody onto her friends list. It had to be, as far as I was concerned, as much as a level playing platform as possible. Now, we all knew, I knew, okay? I didn't go into that with my eyes closed. I knew we'd have people on there who didn't give a, didn't give a damn about the law, okay, right, and that would just try and kill us because lol, right? Exactly like the guy I met on, and I don't know who he was, so apologies to that guy if I'm dissing it, but lol, killed her, right? And I said, yeah, but that we can, in the law, that is just somebody going, I'm going to kill her because I'm a madman, or I'm, there's a bounty on her head. And I said, well, I'll put a bounty on her head, and I put a 5 million bounty on Salome's head, right, in the law, and in the game actually. So if you killed her, you got 5 million credits. Okay, for most most commanders, 5 million credits was like whatever. But I actually asked Frontier, look, it should be 50, maybe 500 million credits. It should be like game-changing money, right? And they wouldn't do it. Okay, they wouldn't let me put more than 5 million on Salome's head, which I thought was a bit daft. But anyway, so that's what she was. Now, a few people are talking about Salome wasn't a great combat pilot. No, she wasn't. Right? She'd been in the ship once or twice. She knew how to fly. She could navigate. She could probably dock, but she was not combat ready, hardened veteran. So, which suited me quite well because neither was I. So that was okay, right? And we knew the odds were stacked against it. It was supposed to be a desperate run. Okay, that's what the law and that's what the story had been leading up to. Lots and lots of people wanted to stop her for reasons. Okay, in the story. So it had to be desperate. It had to be a high stakes mission. It was in my head, I was trying to make it the end of episode 4 in Star Wars, right? It's a desperate attempt to defeat the Death Star, right, before it destroys your home base. This was a desperate attempt to get into the core world, to deliver a message against the odds, right, when everybody else was basically trying to stop you. It was supposed to be tough, right? And it was pitched into the community as you can be on her side or you can be against her. You guys take your choice, right? You're the elite community. Bring your ship, and you can do what the hell you like, okay? For her, against her, or just ignore it, okay? Open mode. The other thing I said is Iron Man rules apply, okay? So I said, if Salome dies in the game, this was very clear right from the beginning, because I wanted this for the story, right? If she dies, she's dead, right? She has been killed in the law. And the reason I did this is because it's got to be exciting. Yeah, it's a book, right? It's a story. It's got to be exciting. There has got to be a something at stake, okay? There's got to be something worth losing, right, to make it compelling. Okay, so the COR, Children of Raxxla, Loren's Legion, are in a position where their, leader or significant person is at risk. Okay, is at risk. So that's the setup. That was the setup. I wanted it. Everybody could take part. There's something at stake, and so on and so forth. So there, that was the setup. Then, okay, now the Elite Dangerous community is a wonderful thing, right? But at this point, things start getting interesting. Okay. What we basically tried to do. Now, I did not have time to organise all sorts of detail here. So all sorts of discords were starting to set up. The Elite community does this, right? It does things. Okay. So the community was set up. Now, the Children of Raxxla and Loren's Legion did provide certain bits of information about things to other organisations, and you'll have seen online. There was an organisation called the Pack, and there were people in charge of the Pack, the admirals of the Pack, and there were, obviously, we were aware of other organisations going on, including the infamous SDC, as they were then known. And these groups do things, right? Now, I didn't see all of these interactions. I was aware of them peripherally going on. But there was an attempt to organise, right? To say, look, we need to manage these waypoints, we need to manage those waypoints, we want ships here, we want ships here. And various people were training the different things, and there was a curious no weapons rule enforced, right? And there's all various bits and pieces here. So that became a thing above and beyond what I'd intended. The community actually kind of ran with this, and it became something that's much, much more complicated than I ever envisaged or could have designed. Okay, and people were routed to discords, and there was controversy in there, right? Because some people said, you turn up with weapons and you'll be fired on automatically because of this, and some people found that not very inclusive, and I was a bit worried by this at the time, because I said, the idea behind this is it's a community event, right? It's supposed to be inclusive. Everyone's supposed to have a bit of fun and contribute to the lore. And I was a bit worried at times it was getting a bit out of hand, because so many people wanted to have their say and be in charge of various other bits and pieces, things like this. It was complicated, right? Things were happening. Now the COR and Loren's Legion knew that these sort of things would be going on, and so at times false information was given to some of the other groups in order to make sure that there was a level of separation in the organisation, right? And one of the things that also happened is on the night we flew multiple decoy Salomes. Now I wasn't particularly happy about this particular thing, so I insisted that there must be a clue in the ship name as to whether you're chasing the real Salome or not. Okay, so Salome with the circumflex E, the accented E, which is the correct spelling of Salome, by the way, was the real one. There was Salome without that E. There was Salome with a Z. There was Salome with 2 O's, I think, and various other bits and pieces like that. So there were decoy Salomes flying around as well. The idea being that partly it might give, it might give slices of salami. Yeah. So there were quite a few ships. And Salome's ship was called the Seven Veils, right? That was the name of the ship, and lots of and that's a valid thing to do, right? If you think about it, is that you could have decoy ships. So there were quite a few ships, right, with the name Seven Veils flying that evening, which were clippers in the white paintwork that Salome's ship actually genuinely had. But there was only one true Commander Salome with the E. Okay. So there were quite a few decoy ships, and that explains why some people said, I'm saw her and she wasn't damaged. So it's all lies, right? And yeah. So there were multiple ships that may have appeared to have been Salome's ship on that night. Okay, but there was only one true vessel, and lots of them went different ways, right? Deliberately, okay, to throw the attackers off the scent, hoping that if they took down a Salome ship, and then we said, no, the real one's still flying. You've got the wrong one. Okay, damn, it was all part of the story, which is a genuine tactic. If you're gonna have a ship of a certain type, put it amongst a whole bunch of other ships, right, that are the similar type, which makes it hard for to do. And like I say, the ships that accompanied Salome were also clippers. The idea being that it was like, well, it takes you that much longer to target them, right? Because you've got to identify them first. So all those sort of things were occurring. Now there's a fantastic meta story about the SDC. And that they've done notorious things in the past, right? They've stream sniped people on the Frontier streams. They've even done things that are not, I think, necessarily in the best interest of the game, particularly things like charity events, right? But we knew they were about, and they were involved in the pack. Okay, and people, they had plans, right? They're bad. They're the bad guys in the game, and we knew they were around. And so there were multiple levels of separation, okay, between the core group that was protecting Salome. And this is one of the biggest myths, right? That Salome's wing was infiltrated. No, it wasn't. Okay, the people in Salome's wing, Zenith, Isaiah, and Eisen. I'd known and played with in game for years, right? So I knew them well. They were utterly trustworthy. And the same for the extended Children of Raxxla, and the same for Loren's Legion. They'd been very careful, right, about who they told what. Now things leak, stuff got out, and various other bits and pieces. But we were pretty confident that we had a good chance of of doing this. Now, we knew about the pack and how everything was being organised. And there was tension, okay, between the Children of Raxxla, Loren's Legion, and the pack and various other organisations about what type of information was being exchanged and when, because COR and Loren's Legion were being deliberately obscure, because they knew the danger of giving out too much information, because it's going to fall into the wrong hands, right? That's how seriously this stuff was being taken at the time. Because it was all a case of trying to outwit and outguess everybody else, okay? In terms of, who do we trust? Well, we can't trust them. Even though they're on our side, right? We can't trust them because there might be somebody in their organisation who's found a way in that they don't know. They may have a security problem in their own organisation. We don't know. We might even have a security problem in our organisation, right? So and this is why there are so many stories about this event, is because there was a lot of deliberate misinformation being pushed about, right? So people will have been told things that other people will have sworn that were true, right? Which weren't true, okay? And that was deliberate, right? So the misinformation that happened around this event was actually by design to provide separations of duty, if you like, between different organisations that were contributing to the event. And this was all happening behind the scenes, because this can't play out in the game, right? And I didn't see all of this either, because I was busy trying to manage Frontier and write a book and various other bits and pieces, and the COR were trying to get me into practices to, get my combat skills up and various other things. And there just wasn't time, right? There was a deadline approach. We'd set a date for the event, and the event was going to happen, right? It was because we published it, right? That was it. So there were multiple levels of security for different type things. So Salome had a route plotted, right? Particular waypoints that we knew she was going to go for. We released and leaked other waypoints to other organisations, which were deliberately wrong, okay? So that people would congregate there. Decoy ships would go through those areas, and everyone would go, chase that, rather than chase us, okay? So, and this was all the complexity that was happening in those events, right? However, the real Salome did have her friends list open, okay? So anybody could go into the galaxy map who was a friend of Salome, and because she'd accepted everybody's friend request, everyone could potentially do this, right? So you could go into the galaxy map, you could look it up, and you could find out where she was. So we thought this initially gave us a massive problem, because I said the only problem is the moment she logs in at the start of the game, everybody is going to know where she is, right? So that was the first problem we had to overcome. Now, we overcame that by the week before logging into the game and flying, I think, like 100,000 light seconds away to the edge of the solar system and logging out at that point, so that when we logged back into the game, we were 100,000 light seconds from the star, right? So if anybody did see us in the system, they would jump into the system at the start as per normal, and then we'd be like 100,000 light seconds away, and we could okay, well, they're coming, but we're going to jump anyway, right? So, and we used Jumponium to do the initial jumps, so we could leapfrog several systems, and so on and so forth. So there were lots and lots of tactics, okay? This was not a whim. We had thought really, really hard about how we were going to evade being caught, and so on and so forth, right? So that's all the planning that went in. There was a lot of planning. Salome's ship, a lot of people say, well, it wasn't engineered properly. Said, yes, it was. Well, it wasn't fully engineered, because back then engineering was actually quite painful, right? Sometimes your rolls would go backwards. I think we got to G3 to G4 mods, right, on the ship. We had Jumponium on board. Salome's ship had 2 AMFUs on board, right, because we knew we'd probably get damaged, right? So the ship was prepared for that. It was lightly armed, because Salome's rationale, and the rationale I worked out with COR and Loren's Legion, was run, okay? Don't engage, run. Because you're unlikely to win a fight with a PvP ship anyway, right? Because it's going to be optimized for fighting. So there's no point engaging with a PvP ship. If it's got you in its sights, your best option is to try and get the hell out of Dodge, right? Because you're not going to win a fight with a PvP ship. We can't make a ship that's good at jumping and good at PvP. It just, it's not going to work, right? So we had a lightweight-ish ship that was optimized for running, and it was stocked full of stuff to make it jump as quick. And I said that we were handicapped here because it had to be an Imperial Clipper, right? Which is not, as you know, the best ship in the game for jump range. It's actually one of the worst. But in the lore, because I'd already established it, she flies an Imperial Clipper, right? So we did the best we could with the ship. It's a compromise, right? It's a compromise. And the ship was as well designed as it could be for the task we had, but it was never going to be a PvP ship. Okay, not a heavy-duty PvP ship, not against something that's dedicated to PvP. It's a good multi-role ship, but it's not the best at any of those sort of things. But it had to be an Imperial Clipper because lore, right? And she'd flown that ship at the end of this book, so she was still flying it. Okay, so that was unarguable, right? It had to be a Clipper because that is the ship she flew. It was her ship. So there's no way around that. So it is not the best. It's not the best ship for this task, right? But the idea wasn't for it to be that. Okay, this was a story based on lore. The lore says Imperial Clipper and a pilot who is not a seasoned combat veteran. That's the lore, right? So the story has to work with those sort of things. And that was the setup. So, we did all sorts of things like diving off into deep space to start, using Jumponium, AMFUs on board because we knew we'd suffer damage, right? And off we go. Now, Frontier's live stream, 3 or 4 minutes in open mode, okay? Other community events where somebody's tried to survive in open mode, and it's been tried a number of times, right, up until this point, and it's always gone wrong. 3 or 4 minutes, somebody catches you, and you're dead, right? So now my instructions, and they were good instructions, I think. My instructions were to flee, basically. The wing would set my destination for me, which they did. I would follow those jump coordinates, and the wing would stay with me as much as possible. And every system we arrived in, they would form up, stay as close to me as possible. They would interdict anybody who looked like they were potentially going to interdict me, but then we would jump in sequence, right? We would always try and jump together. That was the plan at the immediate wing group. So that's what we were trying to do. Navlock together, exactly. Thank you very much, Zenith. That's exactly what it was. That was our plan. Now, we assumed we would be attacked mostly by PvP players who would either see us and intercept us kind of from the sides. They knew we were out of the core world, so they'd be between us and the core world. So that's how we assumed they would come to get us, if you like. That's what we were kind of proofed against. The moment we jumped, and I remember this very, very distinctly, we actually jumped into the first system, and I've never seen anything like it. The entire scanner was swarming with hollow squares, right? And then they quickly became hollow triangles. It was absolutely swarming with people, right? And we just went for it. Okay, we just kept jumping. Now, my instructions were to, if I got into trouble, was to, if I got interdicted, submit to the interdiction, boost, and high wake. Okay, everybody knows how to get out of an interdiction, right? If the fight for the interdiction wasn't going well in the first 5 seconds, submit, right? Okay, so and then high wake. So always have a lock on the next system, and high wake out of trouble. That was how I was supposed to evade being caught. Okay. The other thing, if I was in problems and I felt someone was coming up to interdict me, because we were scanning madly, right, to see who was in the system with us, right? It was to drop out of high wake abruptly, okay? Not to throttle down, just to kill the frame shift drive and drop into normal space, okay? Now, as we know, that causes damage to your ship. It's emergency stop on the FSD, right? So I did that on a number of occasions because I could see people ganging up around me, and they were hostile. I knew some of the names, right? I knew some of the names of the people who were against us because they'd said to me on Twitter and Facebook, "I'm going to try and kill you," which I thought was great. Okay, it was all part of the game. So I did the emergency dump, from the FSD into normal space, right? Now that does damage your ship. And what I hadn't appreciated was that it damaged my ship quite a lot, right? Now, I had the AFMU, whichever way around it is. Okay, so we were repairing the ship, and I had another AMFU to repair the MFU, because I'd been exploring before. I knew how that broken stuff worked, okay? So this is what the tactics were, okay? So to get out of dodge, I would emergency drop into normal space, fly like crazy away from the drop point in normal space, right? Get my hyperspace lock engaged, and then jump onto the next system, right? Okay, so those were tactics. So that was a tactic. It's AFMU, right? I must get that right. And repair any damage with the AFMU. Okay, it kind of worked. The other thing was to refuel as quickly as possible, but don't necessarily use all the fuel, and so on and so forth. If you get interdicted, submit high wake. Submit run high wake. Now the Clipper has got one redeeming feature. It's got boost, right? It's quite fast, so it's quite good at that if you can get away in time. So these were the tactics I was given. This is what we rehearsed. That was the strategy to avoid being caught. And that's what we went with, right? So we ran, basically. Okay, I can't remember what time the event started now. It was either sort of 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or something. And we ran, okay? Now, we were in the 46 Iridani system, which is about 1,000 light years, 2,000 light years out of the core world. Okay, it was on the outside. We were heading into the core. The destination was in the core world, and only the COR knew what the endpoint was, right? We knew where we were going, and everyone else had to kind of swarm around us and try to find us. Everyone knew it was about 1,000 light years. There we go. So it was long enough to make a difference, but not long enough to be impossible, right? Was the plan. So we ran, right? Those were the tactics we used. There were decoy ships out there, and we were attacked, right? Okay, I got interdicted 3 times by players as Salome. So she got caught. The wing fended off other interdictions. The trick with Elite, actually, we knew there was a slight not an exploit, but a slight exploit, is that if you're interdicting someone, they can't be interdicting anybody else. Okay, so one of the tactics that was employed some of the time was to just interdict anybody who looked at all suspicious, right? Because if they weren't suspicious, it didn't matter. But if it was, if they were hostile, then they couldn't interdict while they themselves were being interdicted, right? So that was part of the plan as well. So these are all the sort of tactics that we'd worked out. Now, we kept doing this, and we were flying for an hour in open mode. And I must admit, I was sitting at my PC, and I got the HOTAS and the screens and everything, and it was all wired directly to the internet to make sure my latency and ping were as low as possible. And I must admit, it was incredibly stressful, right? Because every single system we went into was swarming with players, and this is no exaggeration. The scanner was just full of squares, right? Hollow squares all the time, and even cheekily, the game tried to kill us. There was one point where we got a pirate anaconda NPC who, for whatever reason, decided that it wanted to kill Salome as well. So I was beginning to wonder whether the Frontier were doing something. I don't think they were. But this NPC tagged on to Salome and kept following me through the systems, right? And tried to interdict me. And got me at one point. We dropped into space. We had to fight off this NPC while we... Well, we did have a bounty. You're quite right. Yeah, we did have a bounty. So it was a genuine reason for the NPC, and it tried to. It was very determined. It followed us for 3 systems before we finally managed to lose it. So we just don't need this right now. But people were following us, right? These were the things that we, after an hour, the frameshift drive started malfunctioning. Okay, the frame shift drive. I said to the guys on my wing, I said I can't. Every time I'm engaging the jump drive here, it's conking out on me. And then I looked at the modules, and the module health was down to like 40% because of the emergency drops I was doing and some of the damage I'd taken from the interdictions, right? And actually, yeah, that NPC is in the lore. If you read the book, it's into there. Okay, so you know we'd taken damage, so we had to. So what we did is we managed to get into a system where we could drop out near the sun, you know, with weapons out ready in case anybody found us, and then we sat there getting the AMFU, and that was just really, really tense because the AMFU, whatever it is, you know what I mean, isn't very fast, right? It's sitting there going, oh, yes, I'll just improve that and improve that, improve that and improve that. But you know, the hull was also taking a pounding too, right? But there wasn't anything we could do about that. We didn't have any hull repair limpets at that point in time. Now, at the same time as all this was going on, the other characters in the stories were trying to do the same thing, right? Okay, so there was one guy on Xbox trying to do the same thing, two other characters on PC who were all on the friends list as well. And they were trying to get through. Now, this is where the organisation of the event went slightly wrong. Just prior to all of this, and what I'd arranged with Frontier is that when Salome got to her destination, or if any of the other characters got to her destination, and the destination was a Cobra Mark III in the position that the Tianizla graveyard ought to be, which is another beef, but never mind. What was happening there was that the idea was that these logs would suddenly switch on in a system, these logs would broadcast a message. That was the win, if you like. So now the problem was that these logs were discovered because of the way Frontier operated. They couldn't turn these logs on in the way they wanted to have them switched on. They had to put them in the game before the event, which in hindsight I should have kind of thought about. This isn't the best way to do it, but there was no alternative. You know, they didn't have somebody who could interrupt the server while the event was on, so we didn't have to. You didn't have an option as to when these things. Ideally, they would have been triggered, but they couldn't be triggered. There was no mechanism to do the triggering, so the logs had to be there in the first place. And somebody did stumble upon them beforehand, which was kind of like, oh, it's not quite right. So I did say to him he posted this on the forums, and I said, look, if you can not tell anybody, I would appreciate it. I'm not trying to say don't, because that's kind of, you found it, it's genuine, but it was unfortunate. That's not how I wanted it to work out. So the end game content was actually discovered before the event actually kind of occurred, which was not ideal. But there was no other way around it. The things had to be in the game, right, to be revealed. But without the context of what they were there for, he didn't really understand what they were telling him. So I did send him a private message on the forum saying, look, if you can if you cannot say something, I'd appreciate it. Of course, that got out as well, and some people accused me. And I can understand where they came from. Right, you're trying to influence the outcome and blah, blah, blah. It's all a conspiracy and blah, 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 blah. And there are some very amusing conspiracy videos on the internet about what happened as a result of all this, which I can sort of understand because it got very confused. But there genuinely wasn't a conspiracy about that. But anyway, so some of the characters got through to the end destination. My son actually was one of the endpoint destinations. He was flying on his account which had been specially renamed for the event as Rebecca's Cobra Mark III, which was a wireframe Mark III Cobra sitting in the Tianizla system that the commanders were to arrive at. They would get a message telling them where to go, which was Tiorge, and then they would go to Tiorge and the logs would be revealed. That's how it was supposed to work, right? Now I think that that's right, the Cor Meum et Animum was the name of the ship. And so I do remember, it must have been Ran or Zu, did get into the same instance with my son, with his Cobra. He transmitted the message. They went to the TR system and they got the messages, right? So that bit did work. Now Salome was still quite a long way out. So with the AFMU fixed, right, and the ship back up to as good a health as we could, we carried on. And the same thing happened, right? The same thing happened. We kept getting interdicted, we kept getting attacked, and right? Now, as we continued on deeper and deeper into the core worlds, it basically got worse. Okay, so we got more and more players trying to kill us. I said to the wing, I said, we used the AMFU twice, and then it ran out of ammunition. Right, I didn't have the synthesis on board to refill it, so we were out of AMFU. So I fixed the ship up one more time. We did debate actually about going to a space station. Men thought that will just be suicide, so we won't do that. And then we thought, we're getting close. We've been in the game an hour and a half now. We're still alive against all of the odds, right? We're still alive. So then we kept going. We got into, I think, about 8 or 7 jumps of the destination, Tianisla, right? And, you know, bear in mind, this is an hour and 45 minutes into it. I'm tired. The wing is tired. Okay, we've been utterly obsessed by this, trying to stay alive. Was it 6 jumps? There we go. I knew it wasn't many jumps. Okay, that's how close we were, right? But we were tired. I was very stressed by this point. Okay, partly because of, you know, I was thinking back in my head, yeah, all this stuff's happening, right? And the TLS logs were early, and it was stressful. Okay, and I've been writing this book, and so blah 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 blah. So I may at this point I was tired, I was stressed, and in situations like that you do make mistakes, right? Okay, so I will hold my hands up entirely that as a pilot I did make mistakes, right? I did use the emergency drop too often because it felt like a great way to get out of trouble, but the problem is it damaged the ship. It damaged all sorts of things. It damaged weapons, it damaged the frameshift drive, it damaged module damage, right? We hyperspaced into the Enum system. I think, is it Enum Claw? The system where she died, basically, right? We hyperspaced in there. As I arrived in there, after all this time, the instancing, right? The instancing in the game had worked okay with us, right? The wing had stayed intact. Nobody's PC had crashed. The wing had held together. The instancing had worked, right? We got into the Enum system. We arrived in there, I appeared, and the wing wasn't there. Okay? For whatever reason, right? The wing wasn't there. And I heard on the comms, because we were either on Discord or Skype, I can't remember, probably Discord. I said, guys, I'm here, where are you? It was like panicking because there were other commanders around in the instance, and my wing wasn't there, right? I can't remember who it was. The actual COR stream is on the internet somewhere as well, so you can look at it from the perspective of both of the alternators at this point. The wing wasn't there. The wing didn't arrive in the instance with me, so I was on my own for a bit. Now there were some other ships in there which tried to assist me. Okay, I didn't know whether to trust them or not, but there we go. Isaiah has the incident, so compare and contrast. Stick the. I know that Commander Harry Potter has got his view of it as well on the internet, so make sure you chuck the YouTube link in so that people can watch it from both angles. Isaiah, this is what happened, right? YouTube kind of doesn't lie, so you can see it from both perspectives. But my wing didn't arrive, right? And I heard them say. One of them had a blue tunnel where you just get the dropping from hyperspace thing, and it just sticks there, right? And then eventually you get instancing error or disconnect error. One of the wing had that. I can't remember what happened to the other two, but the wing broke up, right? The wing broke up at a crucial moment. I arrived in the system, and then guess who, right? Harry Potter was there. Okay, now he did what he did, right? He started attacking me. Okay, so I had my keybinds programmed for navlock, right, which was waiting for my wing to tell me where the next jump was. That's how it was set up to work. So without my wing, I didn't have a hyperspace lock. So I was desperately trying to scroll down the high wake list, right, to find the next jump system, any jump system I could jump to, whereby I could get a lock and jump away. Okay, by this point I was actually under fire, right? So pretty stressful. Okay, particularly I suddenly realised who it was, and in the back of my head I was going, shit, no, I don't want to be killed in the law by Harry Potter. Because I mean that was going to give me a lot of problems, right? So this was the last thing I wanted to happen, because it's like, I mean, that's going to, how am I going to put that in the book, right? That was what was kind of going around right at the back of my brain. How the hell am I going to put that in the book? For whatever reason, we have the reputation of all these different characters, right? I knew who Harry Potter was, and I know he's on the stream tonight, and from that perspective, welcome. It was a good ending to this whole story, but that's not what I wanted at the time, right? And I was fighting to try and stay alive. So I was trying to get an avlock saying, and on the stream, on the Discord that I was committing, I was saying, guys, where the hell are you? I'm under attack. And of course, my wing couldn't get to me. The wing couldn't get to me. And this scenario was the one scenario actually that we hadn't rehearsed. Is what happens, and in hindsight, of course, we should have thought about this, right? The scenario where I got separated from the wing, thus my high wake that I was depending upon, I had to suddenly go there and do it manually, okay? Which was massive amounts of time. When you're trying to fly a ship and trying to avoid being shot and thinking, do I run, do I boost, do I turn around, do I try and ram, do I fire my weapons, what do I try and do? That was based, and I think, I mean, Besieger might be on the stream. I think I rammed you at one point. I can't remember. I think I tried to turn round and hit you, and I think I ran into you. And the Clipper's quite good at ramming, right? So maybe that would have worked. But that was a problem that we had. Now I was trying to get a high wake lock. I got one. I connected on. I pressed boost high wake, which was kind of, I was beginning to get my head back together at this point, still under fire. I think by this point my shields were down. I tried to high wake. I had the lock, and you ram me. I knew there was a ram in there somewhere because I remember seeing it. I pressed the hyperspace, and it said charging, and then it just said frameshift drive malfunction, and I thought. All the times, right? I pressed it again. I cancelled it, pressed it again, and it started charging, and then I was dead. And it happened so quickly from my perspective that's pretty much all I can remember. That's all I saw. Is as I saw the interdiction. Actually, I've skipped a little bit there. There was an interdiction. I should have submitted to the interdiction, right? Oh, you shot my FSD out, did you? Oh, I didn't realise that. That's why I was busted. Okay, well there we go. I didn't even know that. Okay, so Harry shot my FSD out from underneath me, which is why I couldn't get away. So that's why it didn't work. But it was already damaged right at that point, so it was being unreliable. So okay, so I lost my FSD. So at that point I was doomed, right? Before that, with the interdiction, I should have submitted straight away, boosted and run. Okay, but because at the point I was getting interdicted by Harry, I'd lost my wing. I was actually concentrating on, guys, where the hell are you? What are you doing to get into my instance to help me out here when the interdiction happened? And I literally had a bit of a brain fade at that point. Okay, so I was kind of like, oh shit, I'm being interdicted all the time. I'm trying, guys, where the hell are you? And by the time I kind of reacted, I thought, damn, I'm going to have to fight this interdiction now. That was a bad call, right? Because now I'm reasonably good at fighting interdictions normally, but Harry was better. Hands up. He won the interdiction minigame, and we both tumbled out into normal space as you do. And then what I've just sort of described happens. Anyway, so I didn't know that Procedure had shot out my FSD. So there we go, right? So it was a mistake. I will hold my hands up, okay, as a mistake. But I was an hour and 45 minutes in. I was tired. I'd lost my wing, okay, and I was in a situation that I had not rehearsed against, right? And so we were killed. Salome was killed. And that, from my perspective, is what went down. All the planning, all of the strategizing, all of the thinking came down to that point in time where the game actually, in many ways, and I don't want to take anything away from Harry's kill at this point because I genuinely think he got it there, right? There is a little bit of controversy after this, which we'll get to, but the wing wasn't there, and it's not their fault they weren't there. Okay, they did an utterly stupendous job of getting me, across 1,000 light years of space under attack by the entire elite dangerous community, right? Okay, well, anybody who's against us, right? We survived we survived in open mode here, right? For an hour and 45 minutes under constant attack by players and some NPCs, right? Nobody else has ever achieved anything close to that, ever, right? So that was entirely down to the wing and the strategy that they'd come up with. But it happened, right? The netcode was that a problem? Well, it was an occupational hazard. Everybody suffered from that. We all knew it was there, right? Okay, it was a thing. It happened at a difficult, awkward moment. It certainly did. Does it look a bit like a conspiracy that the netcode, the wing broke up just at the moment Harry came onto the scene? It does, doesn't it? Right? I don't disagree. It looks like a conspiracy, but I don't think it was. Right? I think it was just that's what happened. Okay. People after the event accused me, well, you've scripted it. I said, what? Have you any idea how complicated that was? I mean, I flatter myself that I'm quite a good writer, right? But there's no way I could organise that level of complexity, right? It's impossible. So no, there are elements of it that look like a conspiracy, right? There are definitely elements of it that look like a conspiracy, and it looks like, what? That happened, and then that happened. But genuinely, that's what went down, okay? That's what went down. Now, would it have been different if my wing had stayed intact? Well, would my wing have killed Harry Potter? That would have been quite cool in the lore, right? Would Salome have made it? Maybe she would have done. And so on and so on and so forth. But I've been very clear in the setup that if Salome dies in the game, she's dead, right? And so she died. Right, she died, so that was the rules, and I was not going to break the rules, right? That I'd set up for the game. The game was that there was no escape capsule for Salome. There was no Remlock survival mask. Okay, it wasn't. Those are stylistic choices that I made for the purposes of storytelling. Okay, it was to put her at risk. To make a stake, to make it matter that she died, right? And she did, right? She was killed. Her spaceship was blown to pieces. She's gone, right? She's space dust. Now, the reveal, and this is the other thing. I went on record on my blog saying that players changed the game, and as far as I'm concerned, they did, right? Because they killed her, one way or the other. Now, what she was going to do if she arrived was the Tior's logs would be activated, and she would give a speech. Okay, she would give a speech, and her speech would be a rousing, do this, everybody, right? The speech is written. You will never see that speech because it's not part of the lore, right? That speech never happened because she died, right? That speech, or the elements of it, rewritten in different ways, are at the HIP Medical Centre, which I can't remember exactly where it is now, right? But it's essentially there, okay? So the speech that she was going to give, had she lived, is effectively at the HIP Medical Centre. So players never missed out on what was going to happen as a result, because that's what it was. Okay, I couldn't build anything more sophisticated into Elite Dangerous. I couldn't. I didn't have enough dev time. I only had the tiniest little bits of dev time I could use to make events, right? So the speech never happened because Salome was killed. The contents of the speech and what Salome wanted you to do as a result of her making it are in the Panacea Medical Center, right? So you found out about it, but later on, because, you know, a little bit of time had to pass as a result. The other characters got through and activated the T-Odds logs, but they didn't know what Salome knew, okay? But Salome, in the lore, had taken steps to make sure that if she died, which in the lore she knew was a possibility, right? She knew she was at risk, that her message could be found another way. And that's what the Panacea Medical Center was all about. Now, if you notice, the Panacea Medical Center location is between Tir Nisla, which was the destination, and 46 Iridani, which was the start point. It was en route. So that in the lore, she stopped off to drop out some messages. And the first message, if you go to the Panacea Medical Center, the first message that you get is, if you're listening to this, then I'm dead. Okay? She knew. So she had planned for her own death. That's basically what it was. Okay? So it wasn't any more sophisticated than that. That was the best I could do with the tools that I had, with the storytelling capability that we had at the time, right? And so that was the scope of the Salome event. Okay. Now there were other bits and pieces around it. So, you know, all this pack business was happening in the background. There were lots of players trying to get in on it. It wasn't my intention, right, to have Salome killed by Harry Potter. That was not an outcome I particularly desired, right? Because it was awkward for writing the book, because I can't use Harry Potter, right? So, you know, that was, and I think actually possibly even at the beginning of Isaiah's YouTube stream, I vaguely recall saying, well, as long as we don't get killed by Harry Potter, we'll be doing fine, right? Which was obviously I cursed the entire game with. So, you know, but that's how it went down. Okay. Now, from my perspective, you know, anybody in open mode is a valid target or a valid player, right? So I can't, at that point in time, I couldn't give, you know, if a player had a funny name, then the player had a funny name, right? And if a player had a reputation, then a player had a reputation. I wanted everybody to be involved. Okay, that was the point. You know, I wanted everybody to be involved with the game, and you know, that runs the risk. So there we go, right? And that was the outcome. Now there were some problems later on. I didn't know about. I mean, there were actually a few bugs in the game. There was an infinite pack hounds missile bug that was patched only the week before, which was slightly problematic. And there was some stuff, and I've never managed to get a definitive statement on this, about engineering exploits and weapon overpowers and on all the other bits and pieces. Now, those may have played a role, but I don't necessarily think it would have changed the output or the outcome. It might have done, but there were so many other elements involved in there that you know, I'm not sure you know, it would have been a problem. So what I had put into the rules is that if I get killed or something happens by a player with a funny name, I will talk with the person who is involved and come up with a name that is acceptable for use in the book. That was the only thing. That I made a reservation of. So, you know, if it was Commander, you know, series of rude words, whatever it happens to be, I'm not putting that in the book, right? It has to be a name that, you know, we can use. And so, you know, I had that conversation with Harry after the event, or Joshua, as I think his real name is, we, you know, a civil conversation about what we're going to do, and I said, you know, I can't use Harry Potter. It's not going to happen. So we came up with it. And I had to come up with a rationalisation for why it was him, and so on and so forth. And that's part of the book, okay, and so on and so forth. So now, what I will say is, and at this point, that's kind of, I suppose, the end of my explanation. So we've got a little bit of time, 20 minutes or so. So just a few sort of in closing comments from my perspective. Had I, my dad was very fond of saying, experience is one of those things you only get just after you need it, right? Had I known how this was going to go down, I'm not sure I would have undertaken it, right? But you can say that about a lot of things, right? Because you just don't know until afterwards, right? You just don't know. I did this with the best of intentions. The intention was to have an event that everybody could take part in, so I could come up with a cool ending to my book. That was literally all I was trying to do. That was my intention from the outset. I had no intention of making a conspiracy of things. I hadn't foreseen a lot of the problems that it would generate. Right? I hadn't foreseen things. I was naive in many ways. Okay, about what it did, and to be honest, this was the simplest scenario I could come up with. It's literally a chase from point A to point B. Catch me if you can. How much simpler could I have made it? Right? But even that generated this massive complexity in the game, right? The game dynamics are all part of this, and so on and so forth. And at the time, of course, what I had done, what I had very much underestimated, was that by killing Salome off, actually making a difference to the game, I was dealing with people's emotions, and some people were very upset about the fact that she died, and I get that. Some people were very, very upset about the way the event went down, just in general terms. A lot of people jumped to conclusions about things that I had said, things that they observed in the game, which from their perspective are not I can't say they're wrong, because that's what they saw from their perspective, right? And you can only react to what you think you see, and then you'll be taking those into your own filtering and your own perceptions, right? So a lot of people got very upset about the way the event had gone down. I got a lot of accusations that I had scripted it, that I had set it up, that Frontier had set it up, that various other people were in the know, that I deliberately allowed Harry into the wing to make sure that a certain ending happened, that it was all predetermined, that the players didn't have any agency, etc., right? Harry, actually, bless him, which seems a strange thing after all these years to be saying that, actually, went on the forums and said, no, I got this kill genuinely for real, right? Stop trying to take that away from me, because Drew wasn't trying to set it up. It was trying to be a genuine event. Now, Harry Potter isn't the person I would have chosen to have killed Salome, right? It's for all sorts of reasons, but I will not go back on my word that I'd set up, right, about this event, saying what happens, okay? It's the law. We are deciding the law. One of the biggest problems I've had with ED across all of the years, right, is that players can't impact the story, right? But in this instance, everybody did impact the story, okay? They killed, Salome ended up dead. Despite the best efforts of COR, Loren's Legion, everybody who's trying to defend her, she got killed. She was dead. Now, it ultimately didn't impact the revelation that came out, because, I wanted that to happen, but it impacted the way it occurred, okay? So something happened in the law. Now, Salome can't do anything more in the universe of Elite Dangerous because she's dead, right? She's never coming back. And some people wouldn't accept that, and so on and so forth, right? Okay. Now, there are I agree. Having looked back on it, there are lots of things I would do differently now. But we didn't know that at the time because we'd never tried it before, right? And it's very easy to be wise in hindsight about these things. And I would do things differently. Hand on heart, right? I would do things differently. But we went into that with the best of intentions, trying to do the thing, okay, as best we could. We had catered for lots and lots of scenarios, right? And we had thought about it hard. This wasn't a whim. There was lots of planning, there was lots of thought, there was lots of consideration. It wasn't just let's just chuck it in there and see what happens, right? Which we were accused of a lot on Twitter, on the forums, and blah, 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 Reddit. For weeks after this event, the forums, Reddit, Twitter was an absolute salt mine, right? I don't think we've seen much worse times, right? In some ways on the forum. Every thread was a Salome thread for a couple of weeks. These were all problems. So and I must admit, it was so stressful for me that I actually had to back away from it for a bit. The amount I got, and I know they're not real, but I got emails from people in the community through anonymous sources with death threats in them. Okay, that's what happened to me as a result of running that event. Okay, and I'll say that again. I got death threats through email because of the death of a fictional character and the the outcome of the event that I ran. All right, that's what happened to me personally. Now, if any of you are, family people, you're going to look at that and go, why the am I bothering to do this, right? I've made a small amount of money out of doing this book, but not much, right? Okay, not game-changing stuff, but that's what happened. And I was, it took me a few months. I basically, I'm switching off from this, guys. You've pissed me off too much. Okay, so I'm backing off from the whole elite community, everything, because, okay, not only did you kill my character, which was a risk, but you're kind of taking out on me here. You're fighting me because of your expectations of something. And I couldn't cope with it, right? I couldn't cope with it directly. So I'm wise enough to know when I'm too stressed by things like that. And I thought, I'm backing off. Okay, so I stepped back for quite a few months and just said, you guys get on with it. So I didn't look at the forums. I didn't look at the internet. I didn't look at Twitter. I didn't look at Facebook. I just said, right, I'm going to walk the dog. And I screened off, okay? And so I wasn't around, if you like, to defend myself against some of the accusations. And in the meantime, people were making YouTube videos and, conspiracy this and conspiracy this, and Drew's a shill for Frontier, and Drew's this for whatever, all that sort of stuff, which people do. I get it. But that was the reaction, right? Okay. So from my perspective, I was looking at it thinking, okay, well, I tried to do a good thing for the community, right? And I've had, the death threats were few and far between, but they did happen. And I've had hundreds of supportive emails. So it's, I have to balance that. This is only a very tiny percentage of the elite community that did that. But, and I've had thousands of messages of support. I've had quite a few criticising me as well, but in a fairly constructive way, right? Saying you could have done this, you could have done that. So you said, well, you go and run an event then, if you're so smart. So I did take some time out, and in that time, a lot of these rumours of, this was scripted and that happened, and they all, the way things do on forums and Reddit and the internet, by repeating them. They gain a certain level of acceptance, right? And so these things have been sort of truths about this event ever since, and a lot of them are completely wrong. So Harry was never part of the wing. Okay, he got the kill, I think, fair and square, but he was never part of the wing. We never trusted him. We weren't daft. We had a strategy. We had a plan. We weren't just playing around with this. We rehearsed it, we thought about it, we rehearsed tactics, we trialled it, we tested it. We had gone through the motions, we had spent a lot of time okay, trying to do this properly, trying to do it well, we were completely aware of the limitations of the game, right? Because it happened to us in training all the time, right? All of those sorts of things were happening, and we understood them, we rehearsed them, we knew it, and that was all understood. The aim, the objective was just to have a cool ending to this book. It was really nothing more than that. That's all I wanted, was let's get the players to finish the story, right? But what happened as a result is this amazing salt mine of stuff, right? And people are still, and this amazes me so, I mean, it's lovely to have you all on this evening, but I've never had 220 plus people on my stream before, okay? So everyone's still talking about this event. And it was never supposed to be the event, right? It was just an event, and I was just running it because I thought it was a cool way to end the book. That's all it was, right? Initially, but it's become this. It's become this thing, and I'm a huge fan of storytelling and immersion and all those kind of good things. You know that, right? If you ever see me on my stream, that's what I do. And we have, in this story, we have strategy, we have politics, we have planning, we have daredevil odds, we have great escapes, and we have a tragic ending, right? Okay. So that's good, right? Everyone still talks about this because everyone remembers where they were the day Salome died. It's a bit like a bit like John F. Kennedy, isn't it? In the Elite Dangerous Universe. And I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet. It is, right? Everyone remembers Salome, always heard about it, okay? And that's just because of the way things work. So we lost a heroine in tragic circumstances. And I think from a book's perspective, it's a cool way to end the story, right? Because it's not the ending everyone expects. Usually, we shoot the missiles down the Death Star trench and we blow up the Death Star. I mean, what would Star Wars Episode 4 have been like if Luke had missed, right? And the Death Star destroyed the Rebel base with Princess Leia on it. That's kind of what happened, right? That's kind of what happened in this event. Salome was supposed to make it, but she got killed, right? That's not what we were expecting to happen. Now, I went onto the Discord, the COR and the Loren's Legion Discord, after this event. And I remember thinking, what the hell am I going to say to these people? They've worked so hard to keep Salome alive all of these months, and at the end of the day, we've lost. We've been defeated, right? We've lost. Salome's been killed, and I remember trying to come up, and it's just like the incongruity of the situation was, here I am trying to comfort a bunch of people who I've never met in real life, right? I've spoken to them on Discord and I've spoken to them on forums, and I've never met these people in real life, right? I was thinking, I've got to come up with some words here to A, thank them for all the work they've done, right? And to B, give them some measure of comfort to say, even in this kind of tragedy, and even as a writer, I was struggling to come up with what I can't, and I don't recall what I said now, but I tried to kind of just reassure and thank everybody for what they did. Now, there was also, I remember very clearly on the Discord, people crying on the Discord, and I remember thinking, what have I done here? I've made people so upset at the outcome of this event that they're crying. Okay, there was genuine tears of grief, and it's stressful. It's you've chucked your all into it, and you haven't got the result that you wanted, right? And I get all that, and then I was confronted with this absolute raw grief from people, and I remember being humbled and staggered by that, right? And there was an in-game wake, okay, which was, again, it's on YouTube if you want to look for it. People who cared about the outcome, right, organised an in-game wake. I remember saying to my wife, I said, said this thing isn't over. And she said, what do you mean it isn't over? She's dead. And I said, they're holding a wake for her. And my wife is not a great player of computer games. And she said, they're doing what? I said, they're holding a wake for Salome in the game. There's a whole bunch of people who are rendezvousing in the system, in a private group this time, to pay their last respects to Salome. And she sort of just gave me the slightly sideways look. And I think if you're not a gamer, you probably don't get that, right? But what it reminded, what it forced me to consider much more carefully, and I've carried this as a lesson, if you like, through from this event, is not to underestimate the passion that people have for A, for games, but B, for characters in those games, right? I feel very responsible for the emotional pain and anguish I put people through as a result of what I did. That wasn't an intention, right? But people invested themselves emotionally, physically, by hard work and so on and so forth into this character, right? Either because they hated her or because they loved her, or all these things. Emotions were triggered, right? And when she died, and when she was lost, and when she wasn't coming back, that hurt. And that is, that's the outcome of this event. Is that a character was killed, and people grieved for her, genuinely grieved for a fictional character. That's made me very much more aware of, when I'm writing something now, as to what people are going to do with it. Can I put the nephew thing? What's the nephew thing? Harry's his nephew. No. People try to make more as no. Harry and I have no. We have no family connection whatsoever. No, that might have come from the fact my son is called Joshua as well, but it's not the same person, right? So there is no family connection between myself and Harry. I've never met Harry at all in real life. I've spoken to him on the forums a couple of times. That's it, right? And maybe we'll do a little chat together after all this time, but we'll see how that goes. But no. That's another one of these. Where did that come from? And this is the other fascinating thing about it, right? Is that people are wanting there to be more conspiracy than there actually is, right? There just isn't. Some things do look like coincidences. I agree, but they aren't. Okay, and so and there we go. That's my story of the meta, if you like, behind the Salome event. I have a huge vote of thanks for, my wing, Eisen, Zenith, and Isaiah. They did a fantastic job. I have no complaints over what they did. They were brilliant. The organisation with Loren's Legion and the wider CR was brilliant as well. Very, very clever tactical thinking and strategic thinking. That was all fantastic stuff as well. And I bear no particular animosity to Harry Potter either, because from my perspective, he genuinely got the kill. Okay, he outwitted the pack as an organisation. He used what he had available to him, which was the friends list. He tracked Salome all the way, and he got into the same instance, and it just so happened that the wing collapsed at the same point, and I got killed, and I made mistakes too. Okay, I was under pressure. I got things wrong. So there we go. What happened to the other characters? The other characters made it through. So if you do read the end of this, what happens to them is explained. As far as the lore is concerned, they survived, and then they went off to do other things, which obviously there hasn't been another book, so I can't tell you. But yeah, they went into hiding essentially. Drew's family name is Potter. No, it's not. My family name is Wagar. And I probably haven't settled the story of the meta behind Salome, even by doing the stream. And people always have more questions. And I've got a little bit of time now, so I mean, any questions that you want to chuck into this? One of the ones that is that comes up is Salome's not really dead because she has logged in since. Now I can explain why she logged in since. Some of the times has been accidental. Clicked on the wrong commander. Other times what we did do is we did retrospectively, rather sneakily in the lore, to be fair, when the new exploration mechanics came out, where you could first discovered by and first explored by, we did retrospectively get Salome's ship to do some of those markings and systems that were significant to Salome, if that makes sense. So that explains why she appeared in the game, if you like, from that perspective. But there was nothing particular about that. From a lore perspective, Salome died on April 29th, 3303. Okay, so any subsequent appearances of her character in the game are not lore related, right? I'm not quite sure actually who's got control of that account. It still exists. It may have been renamed, right? So but there are a few places using the new exploration mechanics that came in 18 months, 2 years ago, whenever it was, which didn't exist in 2017. That sort of stuff. That's why those things occur. So that's one thing. Who is the glove-handed man? Well, if you read Premonition, it will tell you. It's very clear who the glove-handed man is. You should be able to work that one out for yourself. Will there ever be another lore-expanding in-game event? Well, you see my dilemma on this one, right? Is if I did do another one, would I get a similar reaction? And one of those things is basically, given what I've told you now about my experience of doing an in-game event for this community, would you do one? Got a question. Did FD actually directly say the Teenagers Orbital Graveyard wasn't in-game? No, they've never said directly that it's not going to be in-game. It isn't in-game, but it's not in-game at the moment. They did promise it was coming in version 2.2, but it never materialised. So that's one thing. Do I have any plans to do anything with Alessia Verdi? Well, Alessia Verdi technically is still alive in the lore. So she is a character that I could use at some point in the future. And if you've read Premonition, you'll know that she is a significant character for that reason. So potentially, yes. So never say never on that one. Am I planning? What colour was Salome's clipper? It was plain white. There's the stock thing. Am I planning to do another event? Well, I'd love to write another Elite book, but FDev needs to give me permission to do so. So I can't do one without their permission. I've asked, and they haven't said no, but they haven't said yes. So I can't do anything with that, I'm afraid. Any plans on writing short unofficial works? Yes. So I've there are some small things potentially in the works. So I will stay tuned on that one. But I would encourage other people to have a think about events. I mean, one thing I was a little bit surprised at is that I got a lot of criticism for the way the event went down, and some of it was justified, to be fair. But nobody else. I mean, there is one commander, Zenith Null, something Null, who's done some events like that as well. So people have done subsequent events and tried to do those sort of things as well. Seven Veils was tactical ice paint job. Oh, there we go. Okay, so apologies, that's my mistake. Zarek Null, there we go. So he's done some in-game events. Am I going to stop talking and have a cup of tea? Yeah, my voice is beginning to dry up after 2 hours. So yeah. So there we go. I'm all about ailing, and then Drew wrote us a number. Now, actually, Jeff. I checked very carefully with Aisling to say, and I said to Michael Brooks, she comes across as a bit of a dumbass on Galnet. Is there anything more to her character than that? And he went, no, there isn't. So that's Michael Brooks's fault, not mine. Okay, I just went with what I was told. Okay, so there we go. I couldn't use Harry Potter's name for copyright reasons. No, quite correct. Did I slip any references to Harry Potter in the book? No. I just stuck with procedure, which is what we just what we discussed at the time. Do I think a lore-heavy event like this could ever happen again with the shuttering of Galnet? Well, not in its current state, no, because there's no way to tell the players what's going on inside the game. You need something like Galnet for it. Yeah, you either need Galnet or you need an alternative to it, right? A lot of mentions about Raxxla. Well, Raxxla, right, is the big mystery, right? And I've done a stream on it before, but I'll do another one at some point. Is it's the mystery that's been there since the beginning of Elite, right? So that's the thing. But we're no further forward on understanding that one either. I do not know. I genuinely do not know, and I've been repeating this for years. I genuinely do not know where Raxxla is. Okay, I just don't. It was off limits for the writers. We don't know. None of us know. The only people who know where Raxxla is are inside FDev, and I suspect it's probably just David Braben and Michael Brooks, and possibly a handful of others. But that's all I know. I genuinely do not know. All I was told back in 2015, I asked David Braben about it face to face at a BAFTA event, and I was told that they know where it is and it's supposed to be in game. I don't know. I've not found it myself. So it's supposed to be in the game. I can only report what I was told. So there we go. So yeah, and this week I've got myself into even more trouble. I noticed that with Massively OP has featured my comment on their website, I've bemoaned the lack of lore and narrative, and you know why I've done, because this event was absolutely about lore and narrative, right? We had a narrative, we had a story, and a narrative is nothing more than a story, right? It's just a story. I've explained this before. Lore is the background detail, narrative is a story. We had a story. We had a person that we mattered. We had stakes that were raised. We had a crisis that had to be resolved, and stuff happened. My impact, right, was to make sure players had as much agency as they could. That was all I was trying to do, is give you guys collectively in the Elite Dangerous community a chance to impact the way things went down, because that's what I saw Elite, the Dangerous, the multiplayer version of the Elite that I've loved since 1984 as being. So I wanted you guys to decide the outcome, and you did collectively, right? As far as I'm concerned, you did. So from that perspective, it was a success. So now, interesting enough, since then, Zarek Null, I think, has done some stuff. I don't think Frontiers ever tried anything like that again. In fact, they don't. From the perspective of me, I don't feel they have an appetite for doing those sorts of things. They weren't really involved. Okay, they did do the Tiorge logs for me, and apparently they did put on some extra server capacity for the event, but that was really it as far as their involvement in the Salome event. Okay, I didn't want them to have to do any more than that, because I didn't want to get in their way, and they're busy being devs and doing devy things, right? I wanted to keep Frontiers' involvement to a minimum, and they sort of distanced themselves from it, to be frank. When they saw what I was trying to do, I think they kind of took a view of this could go west on us, right? Drew's doing something extremely risky, and we don't want to be a part of it. So they put out quite a lot of comms actually the week before, saying this isn't a Frontier event. This is Drew's event. We're allowing him to do it, but it's not our event, right? So they sort of shied away from it. I think they were a bit nervous about it, and I can't really blame them for that. But it was very clear that this was a Drew event and not an FDev event. Okay, in the week or so before the event went down, and then there we go, right? Okay, so nobody has done something in any way similar since, as far as I know. Now, the interesting thing is, I did have a look today, and I'll just show this just as we come to the end of the stream. Now, this is a selection of internet coverage that I discovered, right, about the event. And for those of you who are getting disconnection problems, I have got this recorded on YouTube, so I will post it up tomorrow once it's processed. So if you're having streaming problems, then apologies for that, but you will be able to watch it again. So this is a selection of the internet. Now, the interesting about this here is that there are several well-respected or relatively well-known internet sites. Okay, so Ars Technica, Polygon, Alpha Orbital here, Massively Overpowered, PC Games N, Galnet itself. I wrote that one, by the way. Kokotu, if that's how you pronounce it. Kotaku, Eurogamer, Rock Paper Shotgun, MMO Games, whoever that is, don'tfeedthegamers.com, my website, Elite Dangerous, Reddit, my website again, and so on and so forth, right? You can go,
welcome back to the
there's the broadcast talking about the memorial for Salome. Now, interesting enough, all of these sites, okay, all of these online gaming magazines, got big portions of the story wrong, apart from one. And I will give them a shout out here because they deserve it. Charlie Hall of Polygon is the only member of the press who actually took the trouble to get in contact with me and ask me for my side of the events. Okay, so of all the articles that are on the internet about the Salome event, this is the only one. So I'll stick this one in the chat. This is the only one that I think actually is close to accurately representing what happened. Okay, so massive props to Charlie Hall for doing that, because he took the time to interview me and ask me what had transpired. Rather naughtily, Ars Technica here, which I had quite a bit of respect for, right, before this, says here, down the bottom, where is it? Right, Ars has reached out to both Wagar and some of the Smiling Dog Crew principals, but as of press time, no one has responded. That is actually not true. Ars Technica never contacted me. I monitored Twitter, email, my website, etc., etc., etc. That is actually a lie. So at that point, I lost respect for Ars Technica because they published something about me that they said they checked with me, and they didn't. So massive props to Charlie Hall, who did. He was the only member of the press who tried to get to the bottom of it. Actually did his job properly, right? Actually investigatively checked into it. I don't know whether he talked to Harry. Basuja says that Ars never contacted me too. So there we go. Okay, so that's the quality of the gaming press. So if you do need any updates on Elite and you want to consider trusting them, Polygon is the place to go. Okay, so there we go. Everybody else took a spin on the story, which wasn't necessarily unreasonable, but notice the tone here. Epic near Eve-worthy troll sabotages Elite Dangerous community event. Well, did he? Maybe that's an interpretation. Notice the Polygon one. Okay, Elite Dangerous 3,000 player battle royale. Slightly more positive. This one, novel concluding Salome event was wrecked by long con griefers. Okay. Elite Dangerous latest community event sabotaged by deep cover trolls. There was a story here that they wanted to tell, right? But they didn't get down to the truth of the matter. Again, Kotaku. So notorious Elite Dangerous troll ruins historic in-game event. Clicky titles, I agree. Eurogamer. Actually, they weren't so bad. Rock Paper Shotgun. Elite Dangerous event sabotaged by a boy wizard. Now, okay, made a better headline, right? Made a better headline than actually what really went down, which was what Charlie Hall of Polygon painted. Now, you can. I'm not going to tell you what to think. Okay, you can make up your mind about this event, whether it was a good thing, whether it was a bad thing, whether I did a good job, whether it was sabotaged, whether it should have happened at all. But right now, 3 years down the line, okay, it did happen. It was a thing. We did the thing. Lots of people worked very hard to make some content in the game. It's part of the history of Elite Dangerous now. You can't deny it. You can argue about it, and amazingly, right, we're 3 years down the line, right, and we're still talking about it. And 3 years in the lifetime of Elite Dangerous is 50% of the time the game has been around. So this happened. All this happened in the first 50% of the history of the game, right? And the second 50% has been something else. So but from my perspective, what I was trying to do, I was trying to finish my book. I was trying to give you guys as much involvement as I could in the story, trying to give you as much agency as possible, and that was it, right? That's all I was trying to do. So apologies. Looks like the stream is going in and out. Maybe I'm running out of bandwidth or something. There we go. But anyway, we're kind of at the end, right? But Isaiah is quite correct there. The objective of the defenders was to defend, and the objective of the attackers was to attack. So, and yeah, Hastroff Karkos, you're quite right. I wanted you to blaze your own trail, and you did, right? You did. You made a difference, right? You killed somebody. You changed the story, and I had to write what you did. That's what I wanted to do. There we go. That was it. So, thank you very much for listening to me talk about it. There are some links on my website about my views on it. You'll find all sorts of stuff online, right? You'll find all sorts of stuff about the conspiracies, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff about me that I probably didn't say, but it makes for good reading. But yeah, so I mean, that Polygon article I would definitely recommend checking out, because it's pretty close to what went down. In hindsight, it was, I'm not sure if I would do it again, but at the time it seemed like a good idea, right? There we go. That's what it was. So thank you very much. I mean, a huge vote of thanks to my wing, Isaiah, Eisen, and my brain. Eisen, Zenith. Why do I keep getting Zenith wrong? Sorry, Zenith. Zenith, Eisen, and Isaiah, who were my wing on that night. Thank you to everybody who took part, both for and against. Because that was the point. Thank you for those on Xbox who joined in. Thank you for those who supported the other characters and flew the other characters. And to be honest, thank you to Harry Potter for giving me something to write. Right? It was a cruel, hard twist of an ending, but it was a good ending from a book writing perspective. Players did what players did. We did blaze our own trails that night. We did do, we did stuff. It was very memorable. People are still talking about it now, and there we go. So I will leave it there. Otherwise, I will have a tendency to ramble, and I do probably need a drink before I get to bed. But there we go. So, guys, 07 as always. And Bright on Commanders. So I hope you found that informative, and it put to bed a few of the rumours about Salome. There will be a proper Salome lore aspect to the lore. The lore tour starting on 2nd of April, as you probably already know, and there will be the story of Salome as it's in the lore, rather than this sort of meta version, right? But I thought it was important enough to do this kind of meta talk as well. So there we go. You have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend. Keep playing the game, obviously, while we're still waiting for some more content. We do what we can, right? So take care, have a great time, and look after yourselves. I'll speak to you soon. It's been a pleasure. All the best. Take care now.